Here are the writing tips that you need to learn how to create morally ambiguous characters the right way and how to make your readers see the gray between the black and white. Join me on the journey toward world building my own story, as well as providing you with all the writing tips you need to make your story and your characters stand out from all the rest. What is up, you muffin munching muggles? Welcome to Fiction and Reality, where we help you, yes, you become the most devilishly gifted human that you know you are and that you knew you always could be. Ever wish people would see things from your character's point of view? From your point of view, before hammering down with their iron gauntlet, jumping and skipping to conclusions. When you get in trouble for using a little kagabushi no jutsu, high-stepping the kid who was looking at you a little lopsided. Well, I've got all the answers you need to delve beyond the gray and peel back the opaque curtain through some of my own original characters. Let's start by defining moral ambiguity. What is moral ambiguity? It's in the name.
Esmeralda, calm down, okay? We'll get some tacos soon.
It's not my name.
A situation where it's unclear what the right action or response is morally. It can occur when values or principles conflict, or when there are multiple ways to interpret a situation. I find that morally ambiguous characters are characters that teeter on the line of society's generalized accepted standards of what is and what isn't considered moral or immoral, and tend to be the most exciting to write as they challenge the reader to question their own code of ethics and morality and assess whether or not they would have sacrificed for the cause at hand. It splits the divide of good and evil and infinitely attenuates the intricacies and importance of introspection. To give more insight, we'll talk about one of my characters whose name is Soulless. He lives in a world where only the ideals of the red or black scarves exist, one for defending through ash and smoke the present guard of Barren Valley, and the other bustling their hearts to stricture the progress toward a tyrannical future where their present no longer exists, and the past is shifted on its axis forever in the tides of fate. Stands as the leader of the Ashenists who survive, no matter the sacrifice, no matter the cost, to ensure that the people of Cold Iron can tread water, even if it means sometimes siding with the black scarves or red scarves at his own convenience. Along with other components, the fruit of moral ambiguity lies in a character's willingness to stray from the societal standard of morality, willing to have stones cast upon them or be berated as long as it means that their ideals and prefecture of the world remain aligned. The devout loyalty of their own cause, the free-spirited willingness to deafen their ears to the bitter condemnation of those who disagree with their spectrum of morality is what stirs the kindling embers and gives that alluring depth that drives your curiosity to learn about who they are. To get a deeper understanding, we'll need to understand the concept of perception versus reality and just what it means to cast a veil. Now, I'm not going to dig in my Itachi Uchiha Duffy on this one.
Each of us lives dependent and bound by our individual knowledge and our awareness.
But instead leave you with a nice little compact version. A well-refined, morally ambiguous character challenges the scope of perception versus reality and allows the reader a chance to slip out of their rose-tinted glasses and see the world for what it truly is, rather than how they want the world to be. Now, the key to this is to cast a veil or film over your character's eyes initially, and then slowly but surely through the evolution of a multitude of transformative events, peel that film away from their eyes and help us, the reader, differentiate between what is and what isn't feasible. Soulless was bred in a war-torn Barren Valley where the natives were split in between two clashing great arcanist nations, and a vicious and feral hunt for fables that told of the existence of relics that could wind back even the face of time. His family was able to levy the screech of blasters screaming in the wind, the slash of flaming arcs crackling through the air, instilled with only a dream to devour and char whatever their crest touched. However, the greed of an arcanist drunk on the tales of gold and glory was insoluble, and the unrelenting arrogance of the Knight's Blade was too heavy to bear. His parents were slain. Soulless could only see the great nations for one thing, and one thing only: starving dogs scoping the dung-ridden earth with their snouts, counting the doubloons as they go. For him, there was no gray, but only black and white. That the arcanist nations were wrong, foul-mouthed devils that slaughtered his people, and the black scars were right, and those who resisted against these angels deserved nothing short of death. That was his reality. But the reality that you seek, the reality that you hunt, which allows you to sleep safely and soundly under your plush sheets, isn't always what it seems. Casting a veil will work wonders in the process of developing your morally ambiguous character perspectives of the world, by leveraging naivety and desire for a utopian spirit that flusters in the minds of children who haven't yet shattered their shell of innocence and arrogance. You leave room for dynamic shifts in both philosophy and the actions that thread from their ever-evolving scope of view. Homing in on this notion of right and wrong, you need to clearly define exactly what is right and what is wrong in the eyes of your character, and decide what moral high ground they will perch upon.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
If you don't remember anything else, understand that this is the glue what mends and holds the very core of what makes a character morally ambiguous. You see, morally ambiguous characters are willing to crash through the spectrum of right and wrong, willing to be spit at and forced into malicious prefectures, as long as it means them taking one step forward toward achieving their ultimate goal. The notion of right and wrong exists, but they believe that there is justification for crossing the divide, and that the actions that they take are not required to remain within the defined borders of the spectrum. What's even more than that, morally ambiguous characters challenge the world around them. They call out the masses who simplify morality, who encase people in carefully contoured, well-crafted blocks of good and evil. They expose the hypocrisy of rigid moral structures, and in doing so force the audience to question where the true high ground really is. Ripping away the veil. Prepare yourselves, boys, we're going to be ripping a big one. Ripping away the veil will typically be some come-to-life or awakening moment for your character, where some transformative event allows them to shatter the stranglehold of established ethics and morals and veer from those sacred statutes while keeping intact relative to themselves their own moral integrity. The Black Scars, which once fought for the sovereignty of Barren Valley, who drove the great arcanists from their nation, just as all relics and symbols do, evolved once more toward its final shape, one that Soulless could no longer be devout and loyal to, for fear of bending the knee to grievances, the shadows and the echoes of the first souls he had taken, and being enticed to pursue winding the clock back, no matter the cost, no matter the sacrifice. Soulless, rather than bend the knee to anyone statute, denounced his allegiance to the Scarves, denounced his allegiance to Barren Valley, and looking upon the spires of those who had once been buried from countless years of war, denounced his longing for vengeance. He settled on surviving and trekking forth his own path through the souls he stripped from dead husk or belligerent beast. The red, the black, it meant nothing to him anymore. There is a difference between your character viewing the world for what it is, rather than what you believe it should be. The Red Scars, new blood spurring on bright leaves, with their sole mission of restoring the Black Scars to their former glory by defeating what they deemed as a tyrant. Would that make them the saviors of Barren Valley? Soulless could see that many revered this tyrant, though his opinion of him was more indifferent than anything. He was more or less in the way and nothing more. He understood that whatever color scarf he bore had no bearing on the flux of the universe. While this tyrant had been the hellscape for many of his people, stooping even to the point of laying waste to a village off to the side, just based off the simple pretenses of insubordination. The Red Scars were no different for trying to halt progress of a more robust future for Barren Valley, flourishing in their past, and a chance to renounce war once and for all. If even your revered relics that braver men had sacrificed their lives for can rust and decay under the promise of a brighter future, and their flush bright white feathers can rot a tarry black, then what was there left for Soulless to bend the knee to? Both scars would kill for their cause. Was the tyrant the one who killed more? Were the saviors those who killed less? They were both walking contradictions of peace and civility to him. And those words were simply a shield used to hide the next wave of screeching blasts shredding through the wind. Soulless found his own disturbed justification for stripping souls from the dead husk of those buried with spires, reviving their souls yet again to pursue a path of peace that he, and only he, could understand. The Black Scarf's tyrant, who holds the gears of cold iron in the palm of his hand, is met in good faith as long as Soulless's goals are ensured to take another step onward towards its destiny, even regardless of if the tyrant had ordered half of Cold Iron to starve for not exposing the whereabouts of the great nations trying to topple him from his throne of thorns. His promptness to condemn both the Red and Black, who side with specters of the very nations that brought Barren Valley to its heels and crumbled it to dust and ash, renouncing himself from any allegiance to the Black and Red, leaves him pulling within the gray, and his eyes sharp enough to envision a truth that others cannot see. Peace through destruction and vitality, the cycling of new and old souls. This lucid interval or waning dance between this blurred line is what gives shape to your morally ambiguous character, and a unique and controversial insight that will have your audience both raving raging, and potentially even consoling them, depending on what fate awaits them when the veil has been torn from its seams, revealing a lukewarm specter who, with its cold, misty sheet of a face, ensnares your gaze and screams ever so loudly, "Leave a like." Hey, if you're enjoying this video right now, go ahead and leave a like to show some love. Another core component which you cannot forget is the moral stance or the justice that your character has decided to live and die by. So you must ask yourself, what is the cost of your character's justice? Your character standing on business?
Today I got time, cuz.
Are they just another scared pup shaking in their boots? Just what about disposition and argument? A character's justice separates a morally ambiguous character apart from the rest. Well, a morally ambiguous character's disposition is everything, and they are typically full aware of the destruction their corrosive thoughts may leave in their wake, and may even have pity upon the ants skidding in their path, or have a knot wriggling in their stomach screaming, "Don't do it." However, a morally ambiguous character, where most would not, is able to punch forth with some veracious justification for their actions, and is readily accepting of the consequences that will be handed down to them by society at large, as long as it means their justice will be achieved.
I'm sorry, little one.
And that's the bulk of a morally ambiguous character's prerogative as well, accepting accountability and responsibility for the way the tides will shift as a result of their action, as well as having to quell the worms squirming within their stomach for them having to cross a threshold that they themselves once held sacred and thought they could adhere to. So you'll need to decide, all in all, what your character's justice is and exactly where it is that their virtue lies. Soulless' plane of morality encompasses the reaping of souls that were slain as a result of the Veinless War, including the very first souls that echoed to him upon the first awakening of his power, his mother, and his father. Shouldn't suffering souls be laid to rest? Is it right for Soulless to cleave the souls of the living simply for his endgame and vision of a barren valley without war or strife? A world without the need for scarves or thrones? Doesn't peace warrant violence? Doesn't violence warrant peace? These are the thoughts that sift through Soulless' mind, drifting infinitely through a peerless void until he finds out through his own actions what consequences await him, and what the cost of his justice truly is. For your character, you'll want to think more in terms of a close-knit relationship, such as friends or maybe family. And if the stakes are made so that they are faced with having to decide between sacrificing that which they hold most dear in order to pursue their idea of justice. I mean, we've seen many characters in series stand before gods or kings or what have you. The morally ambiguous character is no exception to that rule. Decide where your character's virtues lies and offer the reader or your audience an opportunity to challenge them through slipping them through their own paradigm or worldview. In other words, weigh the scales of justice. You'll also need to do some deep introspection when creating your morally ambiguous character and speak to the devils and angels within. Understand that there are reasons why people do the things that they do and have the thoughts that they have, and why their thoughts thread toward action when hellish deals are stricken. The morally ambiguous character must be biding time for both the angel and devil on its shoulder, but at the same time reluctant to seek guidance from either, as their justice is typically their own and not driven by outside opinions. However, the most streamlined way to capture interest from your audience is to play out the immoral aspect of the spectrum, while still keeping some embers or motes of truth, justification teeming about. Soulless has been faced with the pleasure of swiping the souls of his parents to quell his solitude and solidarity, as well as a multitude of other dead citizens within Barren Valley. Sometimes the devils within him tell him to extract as many souls as possible, cleaving away lives by the dozens to graft the one singularity, monstrosity, that he believes will free Barren Valley from all its strife. Yet even with chaos stirring within his heart, the bright and sparkling angels whisper to him, "Remember who you are and what you must sacrifice. Your actions, though they may not see why, are justified, and condemnation and ridicule are collateral to achieving this justice." One may even argue that the morally ambiguous character lacks insight, and that they do not attempt to gaze beyond their own arcs. This delicate balance is what makes morally ambiguous characters so compelling. They are neither pure heroes nor outright villains, but something in between. Figures who can justify their darkest deeds while still holding onto slivers of righteousness. The morality is a shifting tide dictated by necessity rather than ideology. This unpredictability keeps audiences invested as they are constantly left questioning, will they cross the line this time? Are they truly justified, or have they simply convinced themselves they are? The tension between these forces, the light they refuse to embrace and the darkness they refuse to fully succumb to, is what makes them unforgettable. Your character must be warring between both sides of the spectrum, both the proverbial good and evil. The introspection will be a dance between black and white, a gilded transformation that calls them to reflect upon what code of morality they adhere to. Will your character risk being condemned by the masses? Will they sacrifice the lives of a few to ensure the lives of many? You can, of course, measure fragments of their benevolence through actions. For example, them saving some child through a thicket of rubble, or showing a devout loyalty to the lives of their men. With regard to the murky side of their prefecture, of course, their actions may warrant killing someone who's been dubbed as an innocent mayor who wouldn't dare hurt a fly on the wall, or siding with someone, in Soulless's case, who has been dubbed a tyrant simply out of convenience for seeking their own justice, or to avoid obstacles and distractions that may delay their pursuit. I want to make an imperative that this is an eternal battle as well, and war where they are clashing with themselves, forever pulling between black and white, or black and red, but never settling for either plane, adhering to the gray that blurs the lines. Self-deprecation and the feelings of grub slushing in their stomach are some emotions likely to surface, to name a few, or perhaps they will feel indifferent or totally at peace with their actions, and have come to terms with shouldering the consequences that arise from them. This blurry, bittersweet cocktail is what causes your readers or audience to be that much more enticed and engaged in finding out just which side of their virtue will persevere, if any at all. If you want to keep that aha factor for your character with them blurring the lines, keep enacting transformative events that shift them from either side of the spectrum, and to some degree make it difficult for your audience and reader to compartmentalize them into one prefecture. There should be core components of their character that audiences should be able to identify with, and truths in their methods that their readers cannot deny for the life of them. There should be decisions that your reader agrees with, but also decisions that are perceived as absolutely revolting and egregious, and would label the character as nothing short of a detestable monster skulking the earth. However, this label should not be definitive. By the end of your character arc, your morally ambiguous character should by all circumstances leave honey sweet notes swirling with citrus spurts of lemons dancing about your reader's tongue. And at the very least, they should understand that everyone has their own justice, and some are simply not charged from simplified morality. In the end, the beauty of a morally ambiguous character lies in their struggle and ongoing battle between self-interest and sacrifice, justification and regret. Their choices are never simple, nor are they meant to be. Instead, they force the audience to grapple with the same dilemmas, to question the nature of right and wrong beyond the surface level binary. So, will your character embrace the shadows for the sake of their cause, or will they cling to the last flickers of righteousness, hoping to avoid complete damnation? The answer is never clear, and that uncertainty is what makes them truly unforgettable. If you took anything from this video, I want you to take a moment to crack that subscribe button below and like the video. Like the video because it pushes these videos out so that others can take key tokens that you've gained. So do your fellow comrades a favor. I will leave a link to my socials in the description below. And if you're looking for any more info on how to improve your story, well, just click right here. Writers, world builders, and storytellers aiming to perfect writing techniques and enhance their storytelling and world building are all welcome. So with that, remember, if ever you're lost in the forestry of words, strip your mind from fantasy and look to the window of the world, and there your mind will run free.